everyone. Welcome to another episode with Madhuri Govindu. This is Soulful Conversations with Madhuri. We have a wonderful, wonderful guest, Karen Laos, with me. Karen is incredible. She's a keynote speaker, executive communication advisor, a three times author. She's a podcast host, and she created the most famous confidence cocktail framework that we all want to know about. So, here is a sneak peek into her 25 years of specializing in communication, right? So incredible that Karen has supported leadership teams with NASA, Google, Facebook, Netflix, Hilton, and so many other brands. And I think her work focuses on this powerful question of what happens when talented people have the expertise, but they are struggling to fully use their voice. And that's what resonates, echoes in the rooms that she has with her confidence cocktail and powerhouse presence. And I'm so happy to invite her to the soulful conversation with Madhuri, where we'll get to know more about how to overcome self doubt. And she's a lifelong student of human behavior with a psychology degree and a mission to help millions of women find their voice again. So, Karen, thank you. Thank you so much for being here with.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, so today we will not only explore her accomplishments, but the story behind them, the experiences, lessons, choices that she made, and how did she transform this expertise into a movement? Because I know any room that she steps in, people love her. So I'm so happy to understand the human behind the brand here. So Karen, tell me something, right? You studied psychology early on in the journey. That's something that I share with you. But what did draw you to understanding human behavior, or how did that foundation shape the work that you do today?
I was fascinated by this when I was in or high school, even. Well, even before that. And in fact, I have to tell you a story because my best friend in high school said if somebody walked into two completely separate apartments, one was yours, one was mine, and everything was identical except the bookshelves, you would know exactly whose apartment it was because mine was all personal growth. Hers was all romance novels. And I've always been fascinated by how people show up. And so that's why I got my psych degree and how that, at the time, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And I remember also being a sophomore in college and opening up the textbook, or rather, getting the textbook for my organizational development psychology class, which I didn't really understand until I looked and went, oh, you can combine work and psychology. That is so cool. And that's really what led me into a career in HR. And then I moved into corporate training. And then I loved speaking so much and have since high school that have made a living now out of speaking and training. And it has been so fascinating. So that's how that got started. And it definitely continues to inform the work I do today because I'm fascinated with why and how people show up. And then how do you influence, like what's his name? Robert Cialdini, who wrote the book Influence, the Psychology of Persuasion. I've always been fascinated with how we influence others. And so much of my work is in how you come across with your presence. So it's pretty fascinating to see how even simply a smile can completely change up the energy in a room when you walk into it.
Yeah, yeah. Smile more, especially when Karen is around. Well, thank you for sharing that story. I can totally imagine, right? I had the monk who sold his Ferrari, all of Brian Ways, and so much going on in my little shelf that I knew, oh my God, we are trying to understand the psyche behind the psyche. Let me ask
Mhm.
you this, right? Looking back at your younger self, graduating with a psychology degree, and you could have done anything with it. What would surprise her most about the path that you have created right now?
Well, I think back to when Dirty Dancing came out. So that may age me quite a bit, but it was 1987. And I remember thinking, I want to be famous. And at the time, I think a lot of people want to be famous. I think I wanted to be famous for the reasons that are much deeper around just wanting to be seen and noticed, which I think is a lot of the reason for many of us. And it's not that I set out to be famous, and I wouldn't call myself famous at this stage either. But the reason I bring that up is because when I think about where I was then and how now even simple things like I didn't necessarily set out to have this dream to write a book. I would say these serendipitous moments of the right people and the right circumstances that presented themselves intersected with my interest in always being open to what's next and always wanting to achieve. So I'd say the biggest surprise would be how many people's lives that I have impacted. And just like you mentioned that in your LinkedIn post about this conversation, I got a little teary because I was envisioning and even now thinking about my younger self. I mean, I had no idea what was in store and I had no idea. Again, I'm still humbled by it all the time because sometimes I think I'm like all of us, you could say, well, I'm just me. Like each of us is just walking around as human beings, as ourselves, but we don't realize that the words that we're speaking make a difference. The simple act of generosity or kindness can make such an impact on someone else. And then from my years of experience I mean, all the mistakes that I've made, I think about, wow, the mistakes are the things that have impacted people the most when I tell the story of me being tongue-tied in a boardroom, for example, and my boss shutting down the meeting and I couldn't get the words out. And there were so many moments where I look back now and I think, wow, I've really like I almost just want to go back and say, like, you're gonna be good. You're gonna be okay.
Yeah.
And yeah, and you can always make an impact no matter who you are and from whatever seat you're in. And you don't have to be famous to do that.
Right. What do I learn from this journey of yours, Karen? In those moments of the boss and the boardroom and the shutting down, you used that as an experience to grow, not an experience to shrink from. And I
Hmm.
think you fill so many rooms with joy and hope and confidence, right? So
Thank
thank you.
you.
Thank you for not shrinking and using that as a step board to grow. And that's what we learned from your journey. And was there a defining moment when you realized that your work was not just about communication skills, but also about helping people transform how they see themselves and their own potential, helping people reach their highest self? Was there a defining moment, Karen?
Gosh, I would say it was a series of moments.
Yes.
I don't remember the defining moment for me around what I would call my origin story is when my boss shut down that meeting where I couldn't get the words out. And then when she pulled me aside and said, you didn't trust your gut, that was the moment when I thought, wait, what? Like, why do I keep asking for permission? And I need to figure out what the root of my own problem is. And then that took a while, and a lot of personal growth work, a lot of diving deep into what was it about that. And then to be able to free myself from that and then realize I was in a prison of my own making, that was pretty hard to face. But then realize that, wow, I can be free from that. And there are steps to do it. And then I wanted everybody to be free. So now, when I think about it from that lens and watch people actually showing up differently and then getting, like, I remember years ago, I'll tell you about one story I remember. This was a long time ago when I was working for a company, but I'm still doing the same type of work. And she called me after probably 6 months that I had done a 2-day training program for her on presentation skills. And she said, my boss is looking at me differently. I got a promotion. And even just in the last 3 weeks, I've gotten a few different testimonials from people unsolicited that have said either, oh my gosh, I know we haven't known each other that long, but I started using my hands differently. I stopped fidgeting. I started pausing instead of saying, these small tactical moments. And then she said people responded differently. They came up to me afterward and said, I want to talk with you. And those are the times that I realize, oh my gosh, to your point, exactly this really cool I would say multi micro moments to put a bunch of M's in there that led people to this transformation. And I would have never thought, 10 for sure, 10 plus years ago that I was doing transformational work. I thought I was just doing work that was helping people, but I wouldn't have called it transformational. And now when I think about it, I think, well, I was able to transform and then to see other people and to see other people and actually have somebody last week told me because of you doing this was something related to hiring someone. And she said, I thought, well, why if Karen can do it, why can't I? So she decided to hire a marketing firm to help her as well. So there again, reminding everybody that everything that we do can make an impact on others.
Sure does. And it's a testimony of how much you believe in people. Because what I've noticed, even as a therapist, right? When you invite someone into a safe space and gently hold their hands to guide them instead of shutting them down or correcting them or offering some criticism garbed in the form of constructive feedback, people are humans at the end of the day, right? And all we need is love. We gravitate towards dignity, love, respect. And I think you offer that so naturally. So there's so many
Thank
out
you.
there who are drawn to you. You are incredible, Karen.
Thank you, Madhuri.
You
You're
are.
so sweet. And that means a lot, especially the deep respect I have for you, your profession, and where you've come from as well.
Yes, thank you. Want to know, this is a question from the audience. They want to know, a lot of experts struggle to decide what is that they want to be known for. There are a lot of skills, lot of opportunities, how to marry them, how to make the most out of them. But you, like the way in the boardroom it happened, they said you didn't trust your gut. When then what happens when you trust your gut, right? Do you have a tip for our folks out there, the experts who are struggling to decide what is that they want to be known for?
I would think about what is it that brings you the most joy. I remember one of the first coaches I ever hired gave me an exercise to go back to childhood, like every 5 years. What did you love doing when you were 5 years old? And then when you were 10, and thinking about these things, because if we don't find joy from our work, then we're not going to be very fulfilled. So starting with what lights you up, and as some people call it, being in flow, where you lose time, where you're just having such a great time. And then realizing, okay, so how do I then connect that to how I, again, want to be known? And I do think that it requires some self reflection. And it's also the hard thing about deciding. And it doesn't mean you have to decide for a lifetime. I also like to help people think that they, or not think, but invite people into realizing that you think about it for 3 months. Okay, for 3 months, I'm going to sink my teeth into this and see what it's like. So for me, for a while, I was really focused on I want to be known for the woman who asks for what she wants. I still love that, but there's a bigger piece to the problem that I'm helping people solve is literally speaking up. Like I want to be known for the person that helps people speak up. And then I've added recently in high stakes conversations. So thinking about what it is that gives you the most joy would be the first thing. So that would require some reflection time, whether you're a journaler or you talk to a therapist or a friend, and then start experimenting and testing it out in the market. And I'm still doing those things all the time. I test out what works, what makes people curious. And I think about when I first moved to San Francisco, I would go to networking events and test out different elevator pitches. And in the very beginning, because I wanted to make everybody happy and be available to everybody, I would say things like, I'm a coach for your career, life, and business. But that was super unhelpful. It was vague. Nobody knew then how to even refer people to me. But when I started saying, and this was again many years ago, I coach women over 40 who are stressed out and depleted. And people would immediately go, that's me, or tell me more. So it's also remembering that you can experiment and see how people respond.
Yeah. That's just a master class in messaging and positioning right there, which is the foundation of your work. And that is incredible, right? Three key takeaways, which is listen to your heart, what sparks joy in you, don't be afraid to experiment, and narrowing down your messages good. It may not work against you, it may work in your favor. So, narrow down your message, and that is incredible. Now, you did create frameworks like the confidence cocktail and the powerhouse presence. It's a twofold question. One is, when did you realize I want to turn this expertise into an intellectual property? What was the moment that you realize it's time to turn it? And secondly, if someone wants to book you for the confidence cocktail or powerhouse presence, what can they expect?
Sure. The first one is that I had hired a coach a few years ago, and he was the one who said, well, I've got to start first with my friend Jeannie Grabowski many years ago. She said, because I would call her and say, I helped someone else, and this is their aha. And she would say, how did you do it? And I would always just say, well, we talked. And she goes, no, you have a process. You're just not writing it down. What is your process? And I'm not a naturally process oriented person. So, frankly, for me, it felt like work to imagine writing something down because it seemed like it was different every time. But then, fast forward to a few years later, this other coach said, people buy frameworks. They're not buying just you. People are interested in frameworks. So that's when I came up with he invited me, and this is a good reminder for anybody else here that's an entrepreneur as well, is he said, start thinking about what your framework's visual shape would take. Start playing around with circles or arrows or triangles or what have you. And it was my, at the time, social media manager who said she came up with something called the negotiation cocktail. And I really liked that. But that was again a few years prior. So all of that to say, I believe it was in 2023 when I really nailed down the confidence cocktail. And I found it, first of all, flair is one of my three core values: care, flair, and excellence. And so the confidence cocktail made so much sense. And so just to give a little sneak peek at that, that is where I help people. So this is how confidence cocktail and powerhouse presence intersects. So powerhouse presence is the outcome of what I help people do. So that's the transformation. The confidence cocktail is the methodology that helps you to get there. And there are 8 ingredients in that cocktail, things like your content, for example, your identity, the mindset that you have, thinking on your feet. So there's a variety of things there, and some people need more or less of those ingredients based on their skill set and habits. And so we do an assessment first to figure out, where do you sit with each of these? How would you assess yourself? And then let's figure out where to start working first. So that's the way they work together. And then the second part of your question about what people can expect. So in my keynotes, for example, I touch typically on 4 of those components. I talk about very specific tips on what experience do you want to create. So this is a good reminder for all of us. How do you want people to feel around you? And really getting clear on how is it that you're coming across to others. So getting clear on your own values and identity, but then getting feedback so you know. And then we talk about about self-doubt, really looking at that mindset piece and some techniques on how to overcome that. And if it would serve the audience, Madhuri, I'm happy to talk about any of the tips related to these. But then just to wrap this up here, then we talk about the basic components of presence behaviorally. So things like hand gestures and facial expressions and body language. And then we talk about a little bit about the message that you're delivering. So having a point, bottom line up front, making sure that you don't ramble. And as a recovering rambler, I'll raise my hand there. I have taught myself to learn, and this is one tip I will share, is to, when you notice yourself rambling, to stop, pause, and then say out loud, my point is this. And that helps you recalibrate, and it helps the audience recalibrate as well.
Such a golden tip. A lot of them are gonna replay this piece so many times, Karen. Thank you, right?
You're
That's
welcome.
so beautiful. And I know you've worked with or you belong to organizations like NASA, Google, Facebook, Netflix, Hilton, right? Do you want to tell me what communication challenges that you have witnessed among these highly successful leaders, right? A lot is going right, but they still have challenges at those levels. Any thoughts
Absolutely.
on that? Yeah.
Oh my gosh, this is such a reminder that everybody is human. When you
Yeah.
set anybody in front of a video camera, immediately there is a vulnerability. And then when you sit down, like I do, next to them and watch it, right before the watch, you can tell there's some anxiety because we all want to know how we do. I love the example that Oprah gives that almost everybody that she interviews or has interviewed will turn to her right after and say, "How did I do?" or "Did I do okay?" So we all have that human need to know that we're doing well. So the challenges, I would say, number one, from a content perspective, giving way too much information, not getting to the point quickly, and I would call it data dump. We tend to replace slides that should be just a visual aid to our talk. We tend to replace slides with Excel spreadsheets. And then we think that that's something that people can grasp, but that is not true. Most people try to overcomplicate, and that is a very common theme, no matter what level you're at. And then the other one I would say, from a presence perspective, people tend to get super serious in their facial expressions when they're delivering a high stakes talk. And that creates this furrowed brow, and then we look unapproachable and unfriendly. So we have to remember, even if it's a serious topic, you can have a lightness to your facial expression. And a big part of that comes through even just raising your eyebrows. You don't have to be smiling from ear to ear. I mean, that would be a little ridiculous, but it's remembering to have levity through your expression because that's directly linked to likability. And then with what I talked about before, just that combination of having too much information, then we can lose trust in a presenter. It slowly starts to erode if we feel like they're not taking me somewhere, not me, but any of us sitting in an
Yeah.
audience. And then the same, I'll add one other thing, which is very common, and you won't be surprised by this at all, which is filler words.
Yeah.
And not just ums and ahs, but words such as literally, basically, actually, right. So these words that are actual words, but when they're repeated several times, it takes away from our presence.
Sure does. I'm going to add to that list right now.
Yes,
So the
that's a big
most
one.
famous, right? So
I have
no,
a friend that always says, "You know what I mean?" after everything. You know what I mean?
yeah, and it's contagious. You kind of spend
Yes.
some time there and then you find yourself saying, you know what I mean, after every conversation.
Well, I always say when I used to be around when my nephews and nieces were younger, I could always tell when I came away from a weekend with them because every other word I would say was like, like.
The
So I
like
had
and the
to,
you knows.
right.
Love that. Love that. Oh, I have so much to ask you about the current work that you're doing, Karen. What you shared right now can be a series of webinars that everyone would be interested in because nobody literally sits down with you to teach you this is the body language, this is your unless you have to deliver something and then you're learning the ABCs, the 101 of communication. So, oh my God, there's a wide audience around the world on earth who would love to listen to your tips right now. Before I move on to my next question, I want to ask you, Karen, what are you building these days? Is there something that is out there beyond your keynote speaking that the audience can benefit from? Can they reach out? Is there a membership? Anything? Sorry for the wild card question here, but tell me what is that they can benefit from?
Well, what is in play, and it's going to be live within the next month, is something called a powerhouse profile. And it measures trust, self trust, presence, and your message. And then it gives you a score, and there's 4 archetypes, and it's very sophisticated. I am really pleased with the group that has put this together for me. So I have to thank Maeve Ferguson publicly here. Her team has done an enormously beautiful job. It looks so good. So we're testing it right now. And so what that will do for people, it will help them to look at their actual habits right now and how well they are expressing themselves combined with how much they trust themselves. And they're going to get a courage score, as well as we'll talk about something I call the credibility gap. And you talked about this even before we started recording around how many brilliant, credible people, and I'm just putting my words to it now, but how many incredible people are misrepresenting themselves simply in the way they come across. And so they're not taken seriously. They're not commanding the rooms that they're in. And a huge part of it is simply habits that we can shift, because all of these things that I teach are a skill that anybody can learn. You don't just come out of the womb a great communicator. And believe me, I have the natural instinct of, or the natural qualities of an extrovert, but I have perfected my craft for 25 plus years now to realize, and now making the connection between, because there's one thing to say, oh, you should smile or you should have better hand gestures. But what I have learned through my teachings of expert, people that have taught me as well, and now what I teach is that all of those behaviors are linked to an impact. So whether it's trust, credibility, influence, however it is, whatever it is that you're trying to, however you're trying to influence, the beautiful thing is that you can link an actual behavior to it. Just like we talked about, the facial expressions create more likability and trust. And there's so many things that are offshoots of that from a benefits perspective of what we get when we do those things. So I feel like I lost track of your question, but hopefully that answered it.
You just gave us so much more, right? So and that's a beautiful gift that you are creating to observe the self, to learn from it, to grow from there, and to master it in itself is the most beautiful thing to do. I think you're packing in your experience and expertise to give a gift to the world to understand themselves. And that is such a beautiful gift. I'm glad I asked you the question because now we all are waiting. I am so waiting to test this prototype on myself and share
Thank
my
you.
results with you. But
I
thank
love
you,
it.
Karen. Thank you for
You're
that.
welcome. Of course. Yes. Well, and because I'll add a little bit more to the
Sure.
answer because of how you asked, that if there are, well, let me take a step back. You had mentioned, like, were there other things out there that I had for people that would help them? And so if anybody, I don't coach that many people anymore. So I have a handful of clients. I only work with people that are absolutely ready and want to transform now. So if that does describe anybody that is listening, I would be happy to have a conversation with you.
How wonderful is that? And can they just jump into your fantastic, fabulous, fantabulous website that you have created and just have a contact form or something to reach out to you?
That's a very good question, because no, that is not that is not available. So,
Right.
so if anybody wants to have that conversation, you can email me directly, Karen@KarenLaos.com. And my last name is Laos. There might be something on the website hidden in the depths, but anybody that's listening, because they know you and because they're listening, I welcome anybody to reach out to me.
Thank you, Karen. Very generous of you to share your email with us. And I'm sure if there is someone out there who needs you and is ready, will definitely email. And that brings me to my next question, right? How do you differentiate between someone who simply communicates information versus someone who truly commands a room and creates influence? I know you touch based on this, just taking it to the next level now, but how do you know that there's someone who's truly commanding the room? What are their quintessential traits, rather, that you have seen?
Yes. Can I model this right now and give you a demo 1 versus 2? Okay. So here's somebody who's not commanding the room. So we'll pretend I'll just pretend that I'm yeah, let's see. So you know, there was this thing that I was going to talk about, and it's really important that everybody listen to me right now. So this thing that's coming up, it is really something we all need to pay attention to. And I've got about 10 numbers here. I'm just going to read those off to you. Okay, I'm going to stop there. That's an example of what not to do. And so I want to point out a few things. Well, let me do the second demo. Well, you're pretty much hearing it now. So if I were starting that second demo, I might say, thank you all for coming. Let's jump in right now to the 5 things that we all need to know to make sure that we have a successful launch in the next week. So here are the things. Let's start with item number 1.
I
Before we,
love that.
you can hear
Love
how
the
different it is.
second one. Right? The 5 points and the week and the word successful. I'm all ears.
Yeah, it's so different, isn't it? So the reminder. So first of all, taking a step back, most of us are showing up and doing kind of like option 1, or maybe not that bad, but we're showing up and we're not really thinking intentionally about how our voice is sounding, about teeing up content with the 3 key points, or, hey, everybody, here's what I'm about to tell you. So there's something called flagging statements where you flag what's coming next. Is that kind of flag going, okay, everybody, listen up, or this next thing that I'm going to tell you is going to be so brilliant. Make sure you lean in. That's another example of a flagging statement. And so the more that we can show control through our voice, so the commanding voice would be tone, vocal variety, vocal conviction. Whereas option 1, I wasn't really going anywhere and my voice got softer and softer and softer. And I started doing the ums and ahs. So immediately the credibility is lost, and there was no substance in the first one. So making sure that you come across with that strength. And in fact, a couple of weeks ago, I was at a conference and I saw 2 panels, 4 people on each panel. It was night and day. 1 out of those 8 really commanded the room. She leaned forward. As soon as she took the mic, she would say something like, here are the 2 things that you all, as founders, need to know about fundraising. And immediately everybody leaned in. What are the 2 things? Versus she could have just started talking and saying, there are some things I'm going to tell you today. But if we want to command a room, we need to control and lead the conversation.
Something so profound to remember, but these visuals were so good, Karen. We could literally see the difference between both the versions right there of how a commanding presence can look like. Thank you for the demo. Um, some pieces on your wisdom and reflection for our audience today. So, what is that one belief about success, confidence, or leadership that you had to unlearn from when you started the journey?
The unlearning came about stepping back. So let me just say what I was taught is that you listen to everybody else and you don't speak up right away because everybody else is more important. You need to serve everybody else. And I had here's a defining moment for you. So when I was on the leadership team at this company many years ago, I remember my boss called me out one day because I came to the meeting like I normally would. Here's all the things. And then I said, like I normally did, what do you all think? And she said, I want to know what you think. And I had never even thought about going first. And in fact, I was almost so conditioned by the way I grew up is that it didn't even occur to me to have a voice in that discussion. So the defining moment was, okay, my boss said she wants to hear from me. And there was a broader theme about you need to speak up more because you have great things to say when you do speak up. But I wasn't ready to just start with Here's what I think. And so what I taught myself is something, and it's as simple as this phrase: here's my vote. Why I love that is because it's direct and yet it's diplomatic, and it assumes that everybody has a vote. So that worked for me. And I've gotten a lot of good feedback of people that have said, I love here's my vote, because it's also a great way to insert yourself into a conversation that's less, let's say, confrontational, perhaps, although I wouldn't call saying, here's what I think, confrontational. But for people that aren't used to that, like I wasn't used to that, it's a great stepping stone.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, and that is so much to reflect on right there. So, thank you for sharing. Karen, knowing what you know now, right? If you were sitting across from yourself 20 years ago, what would you tell that younger version of you? What would you tell her?
Okay, 20 years ago, I would say that you know more than you think, and to remember that you are just as important as anybody else around you and that your voice matters.
So true, your voice matters. And sometimes we underestimate how much we know. And such a beautiful reminder that don't underestimate how much you know. So,
Yeah. Well, and I was taught that you don't question your boss, that people in authority, even if they're younger than you, there's a reverence there. And I think that that's still important. And yet, at the same time, it's not the problem that, again, the way I grew up is that I would override or I would prioritize being too honoring of them and not of myself.
mhm.
So it would be, and it's really funny too, because many years later, I found out that everybody on the leadership team, except for one person, was actually younger than me. But I looked at all of them like, oh, they must know more than me because they're older. And it's just funny the things that our mind does.
So true, so true. Such a powerful reminder, Karen, once again, right? And the kind of work that you're doing right now, you're instilling that hope and confidence in the powerhouse presence in so many people right now. And that in itself is such a wonderful, wonderful legacy that you're leaving behind. But hey, that brings me to this question, which is one of the last questions for today, is what legacy do you hope your work creates, or what do you hope people remember about the impact that you're making right now?
I hope that they remember their own ability to speak up and be heard. And this reminds me of my mission to reach 10 million women, and we're roughly at 5 million. So in 2020, I set out to reach 10 million women, to overcome self doubt and communicate with confidence. And so if this 10 million celebration is going to happen it's going to be a day event that's happening at the Chase Stadium in San Francisco in 2030. So we're planning very early to have this incredible empowering women event. And so that's what everything is moving towards. So when I think about my legacy, I want the core of my work is helping women to be free, frankly. At the end of the day, it's being free to speak up, being free to be yourself, and to be able to walk in that freedom, not walking on eggshells or being afraid of people around you or being intimidated or whatever it is, and ultimately not making yourself smaller. So my goal is that everybody would feel compelled to speak up and then be able to live with how people might think about them without, again, around them, because that's another whole thing that I'm working on, is the courage to be disliked. And recognizing, I heard a recent stat that 49% of the human race identifies as people pleasers. And if we can get past that, at least to where we're not dependent on other people's approval or permission to be able to speak up, that to me would be the ultimate freedom, where you're not worried about what other people think.
Oh, touches my heart, Karen. My dear listeners, that's Karen for you. The passion and the confidence that she brings and instills in women is so fantastic. If you want to know more about her, follow her journey on LinkedIn, visit her website. You have her email now. And she has dropped some great bombs today of invitation. Oh my God, 2030, I'm going to be there, Karen. So
Yay!
it is so incredible that you're doing this for women. And Karen is someone who's been there, done that. This is not arriving out of a theory. It's arriving out of staying in that moment, being frozen, getting out and noticing that a lot of us feel that way and we don't have anyone to guide us. And there she is creating this framework and powerful presence and tips and so much more just for you, just for me. So, Karen, you are a gift to the world. And thank you so much for your presence with me here today.
Thank you. It's been great. You are so lovely too. You just draw people in. You're a magnet. You're a magnet. And I
Thank you,
appreciate
Karen.
it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And that's coming from the biggest magnet ever. We just love her. So, yeah, Soulful Conversations with Madhuri will be back, and I'm going to talk to all of you again. But for now, Karen, thank you for being here, and we all will follow all the updates that are coming our way from you. We just need more of you right now. You are not done yet.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.